Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Mr. Arrett and I like to review headphones. So today's headphone that we're going to be looking at is the AKG Mass Drop collaboration, the K7XX. So this headphone's been around for quite a while. I was able to pick it up pretty darn cheap, only 50 bucks, used locally off of Facebook. And yeah, is it any good? That's what we're going to talk about today. So stick around here and we'll get into it. And I'll give you a little bit of the backstory on this headphone as well. Before we do that, I'm going to ask you to take a moment, if you wouldn't mind, if you're into headphones and audio equipment like that, please consider subscribing to the channel. If you subscribe, that's going to help me out quite a bit. I'm hoping to grow the channel quite a bit in 2021. So doing that and hitting the like button is a big deal to me. So thank you if you'd consider doing that. So without any further ado, let's talk about this headphone. And it's kind of a mixed bag is what it comes down to. Now, at $50, I think it's going to be hard to argue that it's not a good value, but you can see, like with mine here, if you take a look at it, it's got aftermarket pads on it, it's got Dakoni nuggets on it, and I've got like a couple of different cables down here too. So I guess the short answer is I really didn't like this headphone the way it came to me. Now, part of that is it was kind of gross when it came to me, so had hair all over it, and the pads like reeked of Febreze, and I found the stock pads a little thin. You know what? Let me go grab those real fast here, and I'll be right back. Okay. All right, so you can see these pads, right? They look a little funky. They were just totally soiled when I got them, and I went through a lot of trouble to clean them out with dish soap and things like that, and you wouldn't believe the crap that came off of them. But despite all that, I was willing to give them a try and actually put them on my head. But the long story short is they're just a little too thin, and my ears hit the inside of the driver, and I hate that. So ended up spending about 30 bucks on these nice big XL Brainwaves pads. You can see if we compare them here just how much thicker and just plusher they are, and those things are pretty comfy. The problem was, even after that, they still just wouldn't quite sit on my head right. They wouldn't clamp enough. So then what I had to do was buy these Dakoni nuggets to stick on the suspension system here, and then now, gosh, these are just super comfortable, very lightweight. They feel really good on my head. So problem solved, but that was about $50 of extra cost to get to that point. Next, I was trying to use these kind of more at my desk. I'm not a fan of really long cables. So I was using it at my desk, and I was also using it with the ES100, and so having a big long cable like it comes with stock was also a problem. So bought a new cable. Well, that's another 15 bucks. So now I've got this headphone to where I want it to be as far as just functional use, but it's gone from a $50 headphone to about a $115 headphone with a lot of effort put in with like cleaning the pads and things like that too. Okay, but now at least I'm comfortable wearing it. So all that said and done, this is how I'm going to kind of review this headphone. Just know that when you're getting it, the build and the comfort might not be up to your standards, and you might have to tweak it with some extra pads and things like that, which again factors into the cost and then lowers the value of the headphone. So all in $115, what do I think of this headphone? Well, let's look over the build here real fast, and you know, it's very lightweight, it's very plasticky. Honestly, that none of that really bothers me that much, but like here's something that just is no good. So you can see this suspension system, for some reason it has like these little plastic tabs down here. I'm just going to stand up to make sure I'm getting a decent shot of this. So it's got these little plastic tabs right here, and you can see this one broke. So they were snapped on both sides of my suspension system, and this seems like a really common problem with these headphones. And honestly, I don't know if that's part of the reason why I couldn't get a good clamp previously, but It honestly, once now the way it's set up, like it really doesn't function at all. But still, it's like, if you've got something that consistently breaks on a headphone, which it sounds like from my research online, that just is not a great sign of build quality, right? Even if it doesn't impact the use of the headphone too much. So right there, it's just loses some points. Outside of that, I think the design, you know, it's flexible, it's lightweight, it's comfortable the way it is. You will hear like a lot of creaking, just the plastic stuff. I know there's some lubricants and stuff that you can put on it that'll make that lessen a little bit, but you know, that stuff doesn't really bother me as long as it doesn't happen while I'm listening, and it doesn't really. So the way it is with the Brainwaves XL suede pads and the Dakoni Nuggets, very comfortable, very lightweight, very nice. Build quality is okay. I think like something like the Sennheisers, I feel like that's a much better build quality, even though they're still plastic, but those are like the 6XX, 58X, those are like in the price range of this, and I think those headphones offer a better overall build quality experience when compared to the K7XX. So build is average. For $50, it'd certainly be fine. For $115, it's okay. For $200, if I would have bought these new, I think I would have been pretty disappointed with it, to be honest with you. But you know, we're all here to talk about sound, so let's get into that. And you know, these are kind of an interesting headphone, and to talk about the sound of these, I'm going to use an analogy that I think works pretty well here, and I want you to kind of keep this picture in your mind as I'm talking about these. So these headphones, they're very wide, and you kind of are like back in an analytical position to look and kind of survey the different sounds. So when I'm listening to these, like if you can kind of think about like you're almost like a security guard and you're looking at like, you're surrounded by screens. And so you're not there, but you kind of have this sat back perspective where you can look at individual pieces of the music, and that's kind of how these are. And that might sound like a rather unengaging way to listen to music, but it actually can be super engaging if you're paying attention and you want to like bop around and really focus on the different pieces. Kind of like a security guard, you know, you could be really diligent and you can pay attention to those pieces and see pretty clearly what is going on there. But you could also, you know, kick back and read a magazine or dink on your phone and, you know, not pay as close of attention. But you still kind of get this all-encompassing sound that's going on, like, around you. Again, you're not in it, but you can see all of it. And I kind of like that way of listening. It's certainly very different from, like, a Sennheiser presentation, which is very intimate and, you know, just really you feel like you're there, you're like the microphone getting sung into. That is definitely not the way that the K7XX goes about presenting music. The problem is, if we stick with this analogy of like a security guard looking at screens, is that your initial glance at the screen, everything looks pretty good. Maybe not like super, super crisp definition, but you know, let's say like 720p screens. But as you pay more attention to them, the problem is that some of these screens maybe are like flickering a little bit and drawing your attention in a bad way, or maybe some are brighter or dimmer than others. And again, after a while, it just starts to bother you and you focus on one of those screens that just isn't quite right. And for me, that's kind of how the K7XX goes. So it's like the bass, it's got a weird tonality to it where the bottom end is really kind of warm and full and mid-bass focused. And then it kind of just thins out as you move through the frequency response up to the treble, to the point where I feel like vocals usually have a pretty natural timbre to them, but then they kind of sound a little bit thin some of the times too. And I feel like it gets pretty peaky once you get up into that treble region. And there are just some times where it really, like I said, you know, it's like a screen that'd be like flickering or something, where My attention is focused on it in a very negative way. And I'll give you some specific examples here shortly, but that's pretty much my summary for this. It's also a very amp picky headphone, oddly enough. I mean, it's not terribly difficult to drive, but I found that, you know, some amps it sounded pretty good on and they would kind of like present things well, and then other amps would really accentuate like the issues with this headphone to the point where it was almost unlistenable on them. So for example, I've got the Magnus here, and I think on a very linear amp like that, it sounds pretty good. I've got the CTH here. I think that sounds pretty good with this, but I've also listened to this on the ES100, doesn't do a great job with it. The iFi Zentak doesn't do a great job with it. I had the K5 Pro, the FIO K5 Pro for a while, and I thought that didn't do a great job with it. So a bit of a crapshoot when it comes to both music that you're putting on it and also the gear that you're running it on. All this being said, it sounds probably really negative, but I have enjoyed this headphone like quite a bit actually as I've been using it. I think at this point I'm ready to move on from it just because of the inconsistencies. But there's a lot of music that sounds really good on this headphone. So for instance, it's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day everybody, and I should also do a quick shout out to my wife, who is fantastic and amazing and allows me to get away with doing all this headphone stuff. So thanks darling, I love you. So anyway, Valentine's Day, I'm listening to love songs today is what I've been focused on. So Norah Jones' Sunrise is one of the things that I've listened to, and that song on the Magnus with this headphone just sounded just perfect. Vocals were spot on, everything was in its place. Kind of like I said, that bottom end warmth of the K7XX was very, very pleasant, very mellow listen, just really, really nice. But then there was a lot of songs that I listened to that just didn't come across in that nice smooth way, and especially when you're listening to like slow, kind of smooth, you know, love songs, that's a particular problem. So one example of this would be Van Morrison, Tupelo Honey, and towards the end of that song there was just like some cymbal crashes that were happening, and again I'm thinking like screen flickering, just drawing my attention in a very negative way. Leon Bridges, Beyond, the acoustic version. Leon's voice, you know, normally I feel like it's a pretty smooth, even, very, very enjoyable voice to listen to. On the K7XX through the ES100, it was just grating on me. It just had a harshness to it that normally isn't there when I've heard that song. And then, you know, I switched to the 660S just for comparison purposes, and yeah, again, both those songs, those pieces were tamed way back down to where they didn't bother me at all. Al Green, Funny How Time Slips Away. There's I think like a synthetic string instrument, like a cello or a synthetic violin or something that's in that song, and that just, again, really, really drew my attention in a negative way on the K7XX on the Magnus. And so it seems like where a lot of things were popping up for me that were issues is in kind of that transition area of mids to trebles. So upper mids, lower treble, that's where a lot of the issues lie for me with the K7XX. Yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much does it for this headphone. So I feel like the K7XX is one of those headphones that, like, again, it sounds terrible probably from the way I presented it here, but honestly, again, there's lots of times where I've enjoyed this headphone. It's wide, the imaging is decent, it can be a little wonky at times, but it does, in general, have a nice timbre and tonality to it, with a little extra bass in the low end that makes it, you know, can be a pretty enjoyable way to sit back and listen to music. But I think once you start paying closer attention, you know, you're gonna find flaws in it if you're looking for them. So to me, this is a hard headphone to really recommend that anybody go out and buy. I certainly wouldn't recommend you go out and buy it for $200 new unless the store has a really good return policy, and if you're not happy with it, you can send it back. If you can find it used for, you know, 50 bucks, 100 bucks, I think then it might be worth a shot. If you have something like a Sennheiser that's more intimate and you want to, you know, try something that's a little bit wider, a little bit different presentation, then you know, maybe this would be a good option for you. Again, kind of falling along those same lines would be the like the Philips X2HR. I had that headphone for a while too. Again, to me, ultimately, it didn't all come together as a cohesive, well presented experience. So I ended up sending that one down the road, but that would be a very comparable headphone to this, to put up against this. So just to reiterate who I am and what I do here, again, I'm Mr. Arrett, and I'm mainly focused on headphones and headphone related equipment on this channel. I often speak from things from a used perspective because that's how I usually buy and sell my headphones, is on the used market, just because that allows me to you know, switch between headphones very often and try out a bunch of gear without losing a bunch of money. I would encourage you to try this out yourself. I've had nothing but positive experiences for the most part doing this, and I've bought and sold a lot of headphones through Hi-Fi Guides forum and the Head5 forum. So that's definitely some, like, if you're trying to get into you know, headphones, that's definitely a way that you can do it in a fairly inexpensive way, and be able to try out lots of different headphones and things like that. I'm going to be trying to do my best to release videos on a fairly regular basis here in 2021. So again, if headphones are something you're into and you're interested in learning more about headphones and hearing about different ones, different headphones, and just how they sound and compare to each other, again, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I will have more content coming on a fairly regular basis. As always, feel free to drop comments down below if you have questions about this specific headphone or how it might match up with a different headphone or amp or something like that. And yeah, just thank you for watching, and I hope to see you here on the channel again real soon. Until next time, take care.